Welcome to Tao Living, the Art of Living podcast with your host, Corleto, where you will be supported to remember that you are the driver and not the vehicle, so that you can walk your life in trust.
Welcome back to the Tao Living podcast, the Art of Living. This is a continuation from an episode called The 8 Limbs of Yoga with my guest, Lydie and I, where we covered a plethora of topics. Yet we're going to focus on one today, and that is conscious breathing, Pranayama. So welcome to the episode. Let's see where we go. So why is breath so important to you?
Breath.
As a practitioner or as a person, wherever you want to go. Yeah.
Well, first it's important because I'm here because I'm breathing, right? So breath is important for life. Breath is important for me, is important for me to ground, is important for me to be present in the moment, is important for me to connect it to this nature. As I am breathing, I'm breathing her nature, and I'm connecting to that breath. And so for me, breath is life.
Breath is life. If you don't believe it, just stop it for a while. So, like on that note, right? What is the first thing that all mammals do, right? All human beings do when they come into the world is they take a breath. And what's the last thing we all do when we exit this plane of existence? We exhale, right? So breath is life. There's no doubt about it. And from the ancient yoga, prana means
life force.
Life force, right? So pranayama is the control or management of life force or breath, right? So Lydie's expertise around breath comes from many facets: Chinese medicine, yoga, healing practitioner. My dive into it comes from playing with breath, understanding the human physiology. So it first started understanding through studies through the body as a chiropractor. And then as a breathwork facilitator. We're both certified breathwork facilitators. We're both certified freedivers. And so in that context, it personally and professionally, I kept diving into what is this thing and how do we access it more, this life force, this breath, right? So unpack some things around the yogic aspect of pranayama.
Let me see where I'm going to start here. But the power of pranayama is to many aspects of yoga is to ground in the present moment. Yeah, is to move the energy in the body in different ways. I can move energy assessing more my sympathetic nervous system or more my parasympathetic nervous system. That would be, the sympathetic would be more go and do and flight and run, while the parasympathetic would be more calm and relax and release. So I can utilize my breath to guide where I want my body or my awareness to be funnel or to be direct.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things Lydie just shared, and it brought up a thought for me, was for a very long time, medical science said, so the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nerve systems are part of the autonomic nerve system. Big fancy words if you don't study that. And basically is so autonomic, automatic, that medical science said that we could not access that. It was on autopilot. It's just the way it is. You can't do anything about it. And that controls heart rate, respiration, things of this nature. And that's so not true. And one of the fastest and most powerful ways to access that is through breath, as Lydie just described. And you've probably, if you know anything about breath, then you know that a 1-to-2 ratio breathing. So whatever the number count is, if you breathe in for 4 seconds and you exhale for 8 seconds, that's a 1-to-2 ratio. Doing that accesses the parasympathetic nerve system because you're accessing the vagus nerve, and that causes the rest and digest. So I'm going to bring it back up to the surface even just a bit. One, because it's here, highly recommend. There's a bazillion resources out there. Great resource for so many levels. This book, Breath by James Nestor. And the reason I pulled it up so quick in the conversation is like back to basic breathing for folks who have never even engaged. We just started going down the rabbit hole a little bit. Like breathing in through your nose, right? So he starts off sharing this research of where he literally went to a medical facility and they plugged his nose for 3 weeks, taped it shut, and forced him to breathe through his mouth. And then they tested his blood profile and all these enzymes and liver tests. And his body was collapsing strictly because he was breathing through his mouth. So learning basics of nasal breathing is a game changer. And then learning how to diaphragmatically breathe. Right? Most people chest breathe. It's very inefficient. Learning how to belly breathe, right? Belly breathing. And so starting on basics, and then we'll continue to go deeper into the rabbit hole. How have you found utilizing the power of breath with clients? Students, clients?
Definitely in a variety of ways. As you were mentioning about a little bit about the belly breathing and the chest breathing, I love to see the body in multidimensional levels. So in a way, let's, like you mentioned, let's just keep really basics in the relation of anatomy, right? Anatomy, we have the belly and we have the chest, and in between those two, we have this major bridge, so to speak. And the bridge is this huge muscle that's called the diaphragm. And the diaphragm really covers from the frontal part of the body to the back, to the side. It covers totally that division between the chest, where the lungs and the heart are settled, and the abdomen, where all the other organs are connected. And as we connected deeper with the awareness of the breath, we are utilizing the diaphragm in a variety of ways, knowing that the diaphragm is the biggest muscle and the primary muscle for our breathing and for our breath. And so more and more we expand through the lungs and we find bigger breath. We are able to expand and extend and stretch the diaphragm. And by doing so, as we breathe in, we are expanding the body, and we are guiding the diaphragm down. So thinking about, you are pressing a little bit on top of other organs. So you are stimulating digestion, you are stimulating elimination, you're stimulating all the organs on your abdomen. And at the same time, more you expand your breath, your inhalations, more than likely you're also expanding your exhalations. More we exhale, more we are emptying the lungs. Needless to say, if the lungs are emptied out, you will be able to bring more fresh air. Yeah? And as we know, so many people say, oh, I need to do a detox. And many times the best detox is learning how to breathe properly.
Nice. So following off all of that, one, most people don't realize you breathe in between 20 to 30,000 times a day. So back to detox. How many times do you urinate? How many times do you defecate in a day? Not that many, even if it's a lot. You're not doing 20 to 30,000 times. If so, you're in trouble. So back to detoxing is the breath then is actually exchanging more potential. And back to what Lydie said, so the diaphragm is a Greek word to separate. So it separates the torso. She just described lungs and heart up top, and then all the digestive organs down below. You're only getting the benefit of the massage of the organs, as you talked about, if you're deeply diaphragmatically breathing. So if you're chest breathing and shallow breathing, you're not. chest breathing is only using the chest to breathe, the intercostal muscles, the muscles between the ribs. And so the chest goes in and out, but the diaphragm isn't moving too much, so you're not getting that benefit. Only when you diaphragmatically breathe deeply do you get the diaphragm coming down and massaging the organs, right? So there's massive benefits to all of the entire body and the organ structures for doing that. And that deep breath is because the greatest gas exchange is in the what's called the alveoli, the air sacs, and they're at the bottom of the lungs. Like the majority of them hang out low. So unless we're breathing deep, we're not getting that benefit. And the other aspect is when people hear about belly breathing or diaphragmatic breathing, we're thinking about breathing out, right? And that's this plane, the frontal plane, or in the front of the body. The majority of your lung field, though, is in the back. So it's really important to be mindful when you breathe volumetrically, meaning like 360, not just in one plane, but this way. Yep. And once you really start working with your breath, you'll feel if you're just breathing forward, or if you're breathing backward, or if you're breathing in both dimensions and all, right? That's huge. So because I'm looking at a place where I had an incident and I crushed a couple fingers here on the property using a log splitter, like crushed, shattered, and tore one off. and I'm looking in that direction, which gave me that memory back to breath. Because of my use of breath, when that happened, I literally used breath and to handle all of it, mainly the healing, but the initial shock and the pain of crushing two fingers and ripping one off, it was painful, right? But I didn't require any outside substance. I didn't take anything for pain. I didn't take anything for infection. I used my breath to, one, handle the pain. Was I in pain? Sure, because my body was giving me a signal I've done damage. But to manage the apex of the pain, I used breath just to control it, to bring it down. So I still had awareness of what happened, but I was able to be present in my body, not pass out from the pain, and not being controlled like, oh my God, the pain's too much, and distracted me. No, I did my thing, taped it up, and kept going about my day, and I've got my fingers back. So pain, right, and breath, Lamaze, right, the old breathing for birth. People, we've been lied to, so, oh my God, you can't handle that, whatever that is, birth or anything else. And connecting to your breath, one, keeps you here and now, right? That's one of the greatest gifts. For decades, Lydie and I led retreats out with wild dolphins. And the reason we chose to be with cetaceans, whales, and wild dolphins is because they're conscious breathers, right? And so it was that intent to be around them was to remind us in the groups that we would take, about being present, right? So as humans, we have the capacity to be involuntary or voluntary breathers, or unconscious and conscious breathers. And sadly, most people, like I was for a long time in my life until I knew better, was unconscious and involuntary, meaning you don't have to think about breathing. Your body does it as long as you have a life force, right? If you have a pulse and there's life in your body will breathe. That's enough to exist, to run your physiology. But by staying in that state, then the mind goes past or future most of the time. And we rarely ever stay in the moment. One of the greatest gifts of learning to access and utilize your breath consciously is it puts you in the here and now, right? And that's what dolphins and whales are, is in the moment all the time. And that's a great gift, is to bring yourself back in the presence. And breath does that.
And that a segue into, as you mentioned, about bringing the breath in present moment. That's also how I support the students to start to learn to meditate. Sometimes meditation for a lot of people can be even stressful. Isn't it interesting to say, oh, I'm gonna meditate, but is it stressful to meditate? Because it's so much here. Yeah, normally the human beings carry a lot in between our ears here in our brain. in our mind. And so learning how to breathe or following the breath. Yeah, many times we go into gentle counting of the breath, and you're visualizing you breathing in and breathing out. So in that perspective, you are, as Lou was mentioning, bringing yourself to the present moment, bringing yourself to one point focus. And prior to getting into a place of concentration and meditation, the breath is that gentle support, the one that gives you a hand and say, yeah, it's okay to sit there, calm your mind, and just chill out. And that's the power of the breath between so many other things. One thing, as Lou was mentioning about his finger, one beautiful point that I also use with clients and students is utilizing the breath as a gateway into memory. Because everything, every cell in our bodies is connecting and is marking all the particular events that you live in your life. So that means you are like a camera, like this camera that's taping us right now. Every single thing is being recorded in our cells. And many times our mind, as I mentioned, is so full of things that many times we cannot assess a memory by just thinking about it. But we can assess many memories by connecting to our breath, because our breath can guide itself and can guide us with it into those treasure box of memories within. So it's a beautiful, beautiful work.
Yeah, so the gift Lydie just shared, one of the challenges a lot of people has, as healing practitioners, is to access memories, as she said, thinking about them. You can think about memories, but to access them, you need to embody. And embody is through feelings. It's the quickest way in. And that's the power of breath. So one of the reasons we use breath with our clients and during facilitation in groups, it does a ton of things. One, it gets us embodied. And two, when we breathe in certain ways, then we can access this cellular memory, which then activates it. You don't even have to think about it. It will surface because the breath drives it, right? There is, and we'll share a couple different ways to access breath, different styles of breathing. And it just reminded me of one of the ancient yogic teachings, which is the mind masters the senses, but the breath masters the mind. And so as I work with my clients, and I know Lydie does as well, one aspect of breathing is through breath holds. And for me, it came through free diving, yet the original source came from ancient yoga. And when you learn to practice breath holding, especially long periods of time or longer periods of time, then you're running into the greatest urge in your life to breathe, right? So when you take a breath and then hold it, and you hold it for a period of time, eventually your body goes, hey, you need to breathe. And actually you need to exhale, but it's saying you need to breathe. And when you stay past that urge that your nervous system's saying breathe, you then train your body in so many different ways. It's super healthy. But one of the coolest things that I work with my clients is then you're getting the mind back in line, right? So for me, as I travel the world and work with people, is watching how many people have what I call given up the reins of their mind. They've turned them over. So their mind is now running their life, which is why it's stressed out and chaotic. And one of the greatest ways to get the reins of your mind back into control is through breath. And there's tons of ways to do it. And a breath hold is a great way because it's very fast. It doesn't take a long time to run into that bump to deal with your mind. And when you do this consistently, it really gives you the training again to train your mind that it works for you and you don't work for your mind. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And talking about breath hold, there is also the the breath is so multifaceted. And as Lou mentioned about that beautiful word, flinora things. How'd you say?
Plethora. Oh,
Exactly.
I didn't know what you were talking about.
Plethora of expansion that there is the breath. You can also see the breath as faster breathing. Yeah, faster breathing, proper faster breathing into accelerate a particular action. Yeah, for example, in some movements of yoga, sometimes you utilize some more faster breathing in relations to connected with the specific energetics of the posture or the sequence that you are doing. And so, but the most important thing is that always that balance between the intake of the breath and the outtake of the breath. Yeah, meaning the in breath and the out breath. There is always a sweet and very important ratio there. And yeah.
Yeah, so we'll slide into a couple different techniques to play with. So as Lydie talked about, activate. Let's say that I'm tired and I don't have energy. Nonsense. You have access to all the energy in the world. It's just a story. And so one of the ways you can invigorate yourself is to breathe more vigorously, right? So if you're sluggish or you need to pick yourself up to talk to a client, go to a meeting, give a speech, whatever that is, be on your game for an event, then you can activate yourself by breathing more vigorously. That will give you a jolt of energy pretty quickly. Yeah. So that's to activate, to calm down because your mind's running too much, because you've got too much energy in bed at night and you're like, oh, I can't sleep. And then that 1-to-2 ratio comes in because that calms everything down. And that 1-to-2 ratio, as Lydie talked about before, it accesses the parasympathetic. So the vagus nerve controls so many things. So vagus is Latin for vagabond, wandering, because it's the largest nerve in the body. And it goes through the heart and the lungs and intestines. And so it's slowing all that down. So you can put on a pulse oximeter, one of those things that goes bleep, bleep, bleep in the medical settings. And a pulse oximeter is measuring all sorts of values. So if I get stressed out, all those values will pick up. My respiration will get faster and shallow. My pulse will pick up. My blood pressure picks up. My oxygen saturation drops. But I can intervene by doing that 1-to-2 ratio, and within just a minute, all those numbers start to come down, all of them. So I'm intervening through my breath, my respiration chills out, my blood pressure calms down, my pulse rate calms down, and my oxygen saturation picks up, right? These are all yummy things, just by working with the breath.
Just one thing, the 1-to-2 ratio, what Lou means is like, for example, if you breathe in for 3 on the in breath, 1, 2, 3, you exhale to 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that 1 in breath to the exhale.
So that shows she wasn't breathing earlier because I did share a 4 to 8.
But is that always
there we go. So so again, there's so many different styles of breathing techniques. There's a box breath, there's a triangular breath, and these are all just ways to breathe in, hold, breathe out, hold. That would be a box breath and whatever numbers you use. Breathe in, hold, breathe out, and breathe again, right? So you can change these cycles of where you hold the breath on top of the inhale, at the exhale, don't hold it all, just breathe in and breathe out. There's so many different ways to work with the breath. The basics are great diaphragmatic breathing. Start with that. Nose breathing. As one of my friends says, the nose is for breathing and the mouth is for eating. And when you do breathe through the nose, there's also an added benefit. You access nitric oxide that's actually in your sinuses, which takes the oxygen and increases up to 20% of oxygen saturation into your blood. You don't get that when you breathe through the mouth. So lots of benefits there. One of the techniques that I know Lydie loves teaching that comes from yoga is alternate nostril
Nadi
breathing.
Shodhana, alternate nostril breathing. I will go there, but before that, I just want to add one thing. The importance of breathing also is how to utilize the breath to control your temperature. Yeah, because if you are in a place right now, it's beautiful. It's later on in the late afternoon here, so the weather is getting a little cooler. So the temperature is just perfect right now. But if earlier in the day it was really hot. So if I'm doing some work outside and I'm overheating myself, I can utilize my breath to rebalance the temperature in my body. Yeah, and I can also, if I am in a place that is extremely cold, I can also utilize my breath to heat my system. So I can control the temperature of my body by utilizing specific breathing techniques. So as I mentioned before, and I promised before to do the code, how to utilize the breath to balance the temperature in the body. And right now I'm gonna teach just the one that you can cool down your system. And to cool down your systems, there is a couple of different ways that you can bring a particular position in your mouth. And if you can do this, roll your tongue, you will breathe through a little straw within that roll. Now, if you cannot do that, you can roll backwards the tip of your tongue behind your upper teeth. And you will breathe through 2 straws on the sides. So either way, you can do either way of those ways. Or you can do a little straw like this. Close your mouth and breathe out through the nostrils. So breathing in. Then exhale. Or breathing in. Exhale. This way you will cool yourself tremendously and rebalance the temperature within.
One of a plethora of breathing techniques. Yep.
But the Nadi Shodhana, as Lou was saying, going back on the alternate nostril breathing. So we are alternating the right and the left in this breath, knowing that the right nostril controls more your left brain. That would be more the action, the going and doing, while the left nostril controls your right brain. That's more the surrender, the calming, the more gentle and caring for yourself side of yourself, expression of yourself. So on the Nadi Shodhana, you would use also a combination of a mudra. And if you observe and remember the prior podcast, I share a little bit about the peace sign mudra, the Prana mudra. And you would utilize the thumb on the right hand towards your right nostril and the ring finger towards your left nostril. And the index in the middle, they can soft in the center of your hand. They can rest on your forehead, or they can just float around. I love resting mine on my forehead because I'm gently reminding of my inner power of my intuition on my third eye. So I would close the right nostril. And since it's evening, I would start calming down my body. So I will start with my left nostril open. If it was in the morning, I can start with my right nostril open, closing the left, because it's more my activating side, right? So if you desire to do a little bit, if you're doing in the morning, start with the right open. If you're doing in the evening, start with the left open. So you would rest the 2 fingers wherever you choose. So you breathe in through one nostril. You close that nostril, breathe out through the other nostril. And then breathing in through that particular nostril. Close. Hold gently the air and breathe out through the opposite nostril. Beautiful. So, and then you go on your own way. The nostril that you breathe in, is going to be the opposite nostril that you breathe out. So every time that you breathe out, that particular nostril is the one that you take the next breath to breathe in. Yeah, so you balance it out. Just go on your flow. You might do that for 5 repetitions. You might do that for 10 repetitions. It's beautiful to do a little bit of Nadi Shodhana. Start with the left right before bedtime, so you can really calm down from the day and have a beautiful night of sleep.
And as Lydie said, when she means start, that's the nostril that's open. And so if you think about that as an inverted V, breathe in and then out, then in and then out, then in and then out, right? And it's just the thumb and the finger are closing to allow that breath to happen. If you'd really like to deeply unpack that, we have a beautiful course called the Conscious Breathing Crash Course that goes into all types of breathing ratios. Lydie has a bonus in there that goes into Nadi Shodhana for, it's like an hour-long unpacking how it affects the different energy flows in the bodies and the chakras, and how it'll help you adapt to the seasons. It's an incredible piece. That alone is worth the investment of the whole course. But in the course, we cover all types of breath ratios. We even do a series around chest expansion, like on the floor, a different exercise series that you can do. Yeah, it's really yummy. And so we'll put a link into that as well. So I'm going to bring it back to the top of the food chain, which is basic breathing again, right? So 1, nasal breathing. 2, if you're brand new to breath, a great exercise is just to use one hand on your abdomen, one hand on your chest. Doesn't matter which one. And breathe, and just notice. Do they both move? Does just the one on your chest move? Does just the one on the belly move? Because ideally, for really clean breathing, just your belly, right? That's great diaphragmatic breathing. If you watch a child, an untraumatized child, the only thing that moves on their body when they breathe is their belly, right? Watch an infant. So to practice is when I breathe in, that's the only thing that moved. My hand on my chest didn't move at all, right? So if I breathe and I use my chest to breathe, my hand on my belly didn't move at all. Just notice which hand or hands are moving in your body. If they're both moving, work it until you can get just this one moving, and you can consciously control that. Because eventually you can then do what I call chamber breathing. You can work the chambers. Great, I'm in 1, I came into 2, then I came up into 3, up here in the clavicles. That's a full breath. But you've got to get this one down first before you start playing with the other ones, yeah? And again, we cover that in that Conscious Breathing Crash Course. If you'd really like to play with breath, then we invite you. October 12 to 15, right here in this beautiful sanctuary. Lydie and I are honored to be the caretakers of over 92 acres right in the foothills of the Cherokee National Forest. It is bliss, pure nature. And it's a 4-day immersion, it's an intimate group, 20 people, Lydie and I facilitating. And it's a deep dive into life and health and transformation and your consciousness. And of course, breath is a big part of it. But we won't be talking about it, we will be utilizing it. And we have a plethora of other tools, since Lydie loves that word, and tools and processes that we utilize during the 4 days. Movement, the elements. So if you're looking for a place that offers real deal transformation in a safe and sacred place, come join us. Yeah, we have people all walks of life, professionals at the highest level have come and joined us in the past, and they've done lots of work. And they vulnerably share, before we came, we were wondering, what are we going to get in 4 days? We've done a lot of work in our life. These are athletes, martial artists, yoga practitioners, health practitioners, healing practitioners, chiropractors, breathwork facilitators. And at the end of 4 days, they're blown away by what occurred in 4 days. So talk is cheap. Come play. Yep. Click the link below. Check it out. If it resonates, come join us. And until then, remember the power of your breath, right? To maintain your well-being, to get your mind under control. And it is your gift of life. Utilize it. Yep. So until next time, thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Tao Living Podcast, The Art of Living. And help us share this episode with others so they can understand the power of breath and they can tap into our world through the art of living. Peace.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Ciao.
To connect further and dive deeper, you can always reach me at my website, loucorleto.com, LOUCORLETO, or in the social channels, Facebook, loucorleto.official, Instagram, Lou_Corleto, Twitter, Lou_Corleto, and LinkedIn. Until next time, remember who you be. Abundant blessings.